Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile, the podcast. This is episode 228 called Elana Frank. This podcast is sponsored by RECEPTIVA DX. RECEPTIVA DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive RECEPTIVA DX test is endometriosis with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, RECEPTIVA DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about RECEPTIVA DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile AF listeners are getting $75 off the RECEPTIVA DX test. So all you have to do is go to receptivadx.com or download the app RECEPTIVA DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, RECEPTIVA DX. And now a word from our sponsor. Attention all aspiring fertility coaches and those on their own fertility journeys. Are you ready to take charge of your dreams and create a pathway to parenthood? Introducing the Fertility Coach Academy certification, the ultimate program designed to equip you with the skills and knowledge to become a successful fertility coach. The focus at Fertility Coach Academy is the holistic well-being of individuals and couples on their fertility journeys. They address their emotional, physical, and spiritual needs through the proven Creation Continuum Foundation approach. They also provide comprehensive business coaching, helping you build a thriving practice and make a real impact in the lives of those struggling with fertility challenges. The Academy understands the challenges of the conception journey. That's why they also offer personalized one-to-one coaching packages with internationally renowned fertility coach Elizabeth King. Elizabeth's mind, body, and spirit approach through the Creation Continuum uncovers hidden blocks, empowering you to achieve your goal of parenthood. For all of you Infertile AF listeners, here's the best part. A special 25% discount on the Fertility Coach Academy certification or one-to-one fertility coaching is available to you now. Just mention the code INFERTILEAF when enrolling and you'll receive this exclusive offer. Ready to turn your passion for fertility into a purpose-driven career? Visit fertilitycoachacademy.com. You'll be empowered to make a difference while embracing the mind, body, and spirit approach. Or are you seeking personalized guidance on your own journey? Visit elizabethking.com. Unleash your potential and unlock the doors to parenthood. Remember, guys, use code INFERTILEAF on both of those for your special 25% discount. All right, guys. So today I am talking to Elana Frank, who's the CEO and founder of the Jewish Fertility Foundation. And she's going to tell us all about her fertility story and having her kids and how they all got here. She's going to start with her, what she calls Sex in the City background with a Jewish observant twist. She's going to talk about getting married, but not being able to get pregnant, going on Clomid, going through fertility treatments in Israel, doing IUIs, being in a kind of a basement doctor's office at one point, thinking things were weird, embryo donation, and so much more. So she's very open about her family and their stories and how her kids came here and got to be here. And she's also going to tell us why she started the Jewish Fertility Foundation and what they're doing now and how you can get involved if you want to. So without further ado, this is Elana's infertility story. Elana, hey, how are you? Great to meet you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm really excited to talk about your whole story as well. So let's start at the tippy top, very beginning. Did you always want to be a mom?
I wasn't one of those people who was like, playing with baby dolls, pretending to be a mom. It was just assumed. Like I worked really hard on the marriage part. I felt like I was in Sex in the City when I was dating.
Ooh, I bet you have some good stories.
With like a kind of a Jewish observant twist.
Okay.
So I was, it took me a while to find the husband, but I just assumed that the babies would come after.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that Sex in the City life. Jewish style, I guess, as you say. What was going on?
I became a little bit more observant as like in high school and in college. And so, I mean, I wasn't like the Duggars, if that is a
Oh my
reference
God.
point, but I was like observant. So I was pretty modest. I was still having fun. I was living in Manhattan, but I was sometimes wearing like long skirts and, not being so frou-frou-y with men, but dating for marriage. And
Okay.
so in my 20s, I was living on the Upper West Side of New York, having a blast. But like, I felt at one point after 6 years of dating, I was like, oh my God, these guys are weird. I'm never going to find my husband. What am I doing? And I literally overnight quit my job, quit the life that I loved in New York, and was like, I'm moving back home to Atlanta because I just gave up. And I met my husband right then.
What were you looking for? What were like your top couple of qualities that you were looking for that you weren't?
I think that I was looking for me in a man, and I like an extrovert.
A guy version of you.
Yeah, but like I really liked like tall suits, smart, like the center of a party. Like I wanted somebody who like, has presence. Like I kind of like congressmen and women. Well, not the women part, but congressmen, like people who are working in politics into a room and everything was guided to them. So I would date these kind of guys, but they wouldn't pay attention to me.
Okay. So like, kind of like a Mr. Big type, right? Like a big personality, like commands the room.
But wasn't really a good boyfriend. And then when I finally met my husband, we were set up. A mutual friend was like, who the hell moves to Atlanta if you're somewhat observant Jewishly? And we ended up moving, like we were in the same apartment complex. And so he's like, but you guys are great. Like you should meet each other. And so he like knocked on my door, and he's like short. He wears flip-flops all year long, jeans. Like just
flip-flops all year long. That's so specific. I love it. Gives a perfect visual.
Yeah. And he's an introvert, like literally the opposite of everything I was dating, the opposite of me, except I'm also short. And somehow it just like worked.
Okay. So what was it about you guys?
That's a good question. It was really easy. Like all my past dating and relationships, it was just so much work and effort, and I didn't know where they stood. Like, do they like me? Do they not? With him, I had just moved to Atlanta. Even though I grew up here, it was still like a new city for me. Also, it was in 2009. So it was like the recession. So neither of us had jobs. So it was kind of like summer camp time where everything just happened very quickly. And we knew after so I wasn't interested in him at first, but after 3 weeks, like neither of us had jobs. We were living in the same apartment complex. He helped me put my furniture together. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like maybe this could work. And, after a minute or two, some fancy drinks, we realized it could work. And after like very short amount of time, we were engaged and married.
Okay. So when did family building and what you envisioned as your family come into play?
So he was already in his early 30s and I was in my late 20s. And as a somewhat observant Jewish couple, it's just naturally part of the conversation. So I don't even know if we were talking about it. At one point we had talked about, wouldn't it be cool to adopt? To help a family who needs our help. And that was like way before we knew anything about us. It was just assumed. We actually, right after we got married, we made Aliyah, which means that we moved to Israel. And I was never on birth control because we just assumed it would happen at some point. But I remember when we moved to Israel, it was already a year after we had gotten married, like within that time. And I wasn't getting pregnant, but we weren't like actively trying. We were actively having sex, but we weren't like trying to have a baby. Once we got to Israel, I was like, okay, let's try. And my personality type is you set your mind to do something and it happens. And after 3 months of trying, it just was not happening. And that was like my first cue to like, what's going on? And so we never really had the conversation. We just kind of just went into it and assumed, at least I did, And so after just 3 months of trying in Israel, I went to a gynecologist and I said, they don't ask you in Israel how long you've been trying. They ask you how long you've been married. So it was already over a year. And they're like, okay. And they quickly put me on Clomid. Nobody checked me. And so, okay, I was going to get pregnant. I remember I had a wedding back in New York and I didn't drink the whole wedding because I was like, I'm on Clomid. Like, I am pregnant. Like, I'm sure I'm pregnant. And that disappointment in that first month was so intense. And I was like, how am I not pregnant?
Right.
And then month after month after month of Clomid and not getting pregnant, I was like, oh, maybe something is wrong. And I remember going to dinner with my aunt and uncle and cousins who lived in Israel. And my aunt worked in the medical field. So I don't know if I mentioned something to her or she was like, people in Israel are very like direct, kind of like New York, direct. And so family building comes up naturally in conversations, especially if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, like what's going on? You've been married a while. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't even know how to talk about it. And she's like, well, do you know how to have sex? And I'm like, oh my God, do I know how to have sex? Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. And then she's like, just go on a vacation, relax, all the things people like us don't want to hear. But she gave me the name of a doctor because she's in this space. She's like, go see this doctor. He takes private patients because this is a country that has socialized medicine. So I was like, okay. And like we were used to, writing checks for medical treatment. So it wasn't like the socialized medicine part of free insurance coverage, like was new to us. This wasn't. So we made appointments with this doctor and he was an hour away from where we lived and he accepted appointments at night. So we would go at night, drive an hour. I remember we used to get pizza beforehand and he never checked me and he started doing IUIs on me right away. So he would literally, my husband would do his business in the bathroom. And this is like in his house, in the basement. He had like a doctor's office and begin to do IUIs on me. Okay. And he would like look at my husband's sperm in the microscope. Like it was so, knowing what I know now, it was so weird. But
how did you feel about that? Like, were you like, what's going on? Or was it like, okay, this is what happens. This feels normal.
Even back then, 13-ish years ago, like, it's not like I Googled online or went on Facebook to see if this was normal or not. And we're in a new, country navigating this. And I knew nobody who was going through infertility. So I wasn't asking anybody. I was like, okay, I guess this is just how you have a baby. And like my husband was so focused. At this point, we're already in therapy because it's challenging and hard. Yes. And he just was like, oh my God, I got to make her happy. Like she wants a baby. I got to make her happy. And so we weren't asking questions. We were just doing. And we did it. And I think we thought more than anything, it was weird. Like it was weird. And month after month of not getting pregnant and then like it just being harder emotionally. And we're writing checks, which is weird in that. And we were just doing it. And
how many did you do?
I don't even know, 6 or 7. I don't remember. At some point we started, with injections and, it's all a blur now, but we did a lot. And my personality, when I meet a lot of people now, like, so many people are researchers and want all the information and data and before they do anything, I'm a very trusting person, trusting of people who are educated. I care more about their education and knowing that they're coming with good credentials so that I don't have to do all the investigation. And ultimately, after several months, we were like, this is weird. And we went to get a second opinion. And it took a few months to find a doctor. This time we are doing more research. And we found a doctor. This is like way after, a year into the timeline. And for the first time, somebody checked me.
I can't believe they hadn't given you like a proper exam or tests or baselines or any of that stuff, right?
Yep. And so they said that they were going to do an X-ray. so what's an x-ray? It was not an x-ray. At this point, like I've been through so many things. Jason, my husband, didn't come and they're doing an x-ray. I'm wearing a thong underwear. I'm going to go to work afterwards. And the x-ray was to check to see if my tubes were blocked. So there, and that actually is my diagnosis. So when you have a diagnosis where your tubes are blocked, it's very, very painful. So I was like bleeding afterwards. I was holding the nurse's hand, and in Israel, they're like, "Here's some cotton for your underwear," and I'm like bleeding and crying, and it was,
oh my gosh,
it was awful. But after all of that, you know, the doctor typed on his computer, and he's like, "Oh, you're eligible for IVF. Let's go ahead and do it in a few months," and it was free. And from that process, I was able to retrieve 20 plus eggs. And we made significant amount of embryos. I don't remember exactly. At that time, it wasn't encouraged to test them. The thought process in Israel is a little bit different, even today. But I was able to, I think that first time we put in 2 or 3 embryos. That was just what you did at the time. And
so what year was this? You said it was like 13 years ago or so?
So now this is 2011.
Okay.
So this was, 2010, 2011. I have an almost 11-year-old, and we put him in, and it turned out to be twins. We lost one along the way, but at that time, it was like 8 weeks. You just know so much so early when you're going through the process. Truthfully, I was disappointed. It wasn't a trauma. I was so excited to be pregnant with one. And it worked the first time. And I didn't know if I was going to be that lucky again. And I, 1 year later, put in 2 or 3 more. Same thing happened. It was also 2 and diminished into 1. And also felt very lucky and happy. And I didn't know as much as I know now to know that maybe I should have been more disappointed, or how lucky I was that it actually worked these 2 times. And around this time, when I came back to America, when I had a 6-week-old and a 1-year-old, and I was sitting in the baby pool back in Atlanta, and for the first time ever started talking about what I went through. And I was talking with other moms who I knew from my childhood. And we all shared the same, like, oh, it was so hard with our husbands. There was so much fighting and drama and just the ups and downs and lack of information and support. And they started talking about how expensive their babies were. And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, like really, truly no idea. And that's when I had the idea to start the Jewish Fertility Foundation.
Okay.
This is 8 years ago, but I was not done with my own journey.
Right. So yeah, I feel like we just skipped forward.
So like that was 8 years ago. And then I knew, like, my husband and I always had this number 4. We wanted 4 kids.
Okay.
And so like my journey wasn't over. I had these 2 babies.
Okay, wait. Can we talk about the first one? You already talked about that transfer. Can we talk about the second one really quickly? How did that process go? Was it your next transfer? Like what happened with that?
It worked the first time. Like it worked. So it was my first transfer after my first child, and it also it worked. He was also 2.
Did you do one embryo or more than one?
I always did 2 or 3.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
It was always multiple, and it took again. So it started as 2. And then we always say, like, you probably ate your brother because he has a birthmark on his back. They call it. Oh my God. We're very, I don't know if that's too.
No, I say that to my daughter too, because they thought she had a vanishing twin, and her name is Ever. So when she was little and she was like being crabby, I'd be like, this is your evil twin, Never. So it was like Never and Ever. So, and they said she might have absorbed the twin. It was never like fully proven, I guess.
But do they, so if they have like birthmarks on their body, they say that maybe it is the diminished twin.
Cool. She doesn't really have any huge birthmarks, but I'll have to double think.
We also ask my second boy, like, are you cold? Because he was in the freezer for a year. So we're like, are you cold? Are you cold?
Oh my God, you're funny.
So
Are you chilling?
exactly. So then comes the much harder part of my story, because I know I want more children. I have these two amazing babies, and I have about 8 or 9 embryos, extra embryos in Israel, and I'm in America. And so my husband's like, listen, I'm getting older. I don't want to be an old dad. Like, you can have as many kids as you want until like we're done with all of the embryos. So I'm like, awesome. Okay, I don't need you anymore. I can leave my babies at home with you. I start going back and forth to Israel to try to use up my embryos. And I did that 3 times.
Oh my
And
God. How
remember,
long of a flight is that you're going from Atlanta?
it's a 12-hour, like 10 to 12 hours different direction.
This episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. You can skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh does more than just delicious dinners. Not only can you take your pick from 40 weekly recipes, but you can choose from over 100 items to round out your order, from snacks and easy lunches to desserts and pantry necessities. Everything arrives in one box on a delivery day that you choose. No worries, guys. If you're not a pro in the kitchen, HelloFresh's foolproof recipes arrive pre-portioned and easy to prepare in just a few easy steps. I have personally tried and loved HelloFresh. It saves time, it makes cooking so easy and fast, and everything I've tried from HelloFresh is super delicious. So here's the thing. Go to HelloFresh.com/InfertileAF16 and use code InfertileAF16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. I mean, I don't know if it gets any better than that. Again, you can go to HelloFresh.com/InfertileAF16 and use code InfertileAF16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. I know everybody listening is looking for fresh, easy, healthy meals. So guys, please check out HelloFresh and make sure that you check out America's #1 meal kit. And now, a brief word from one of our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Avi. Avi is the obvious choice in health and wellness supplements. Their products range from collagen for your hair, skin, and nails, to weight loss solutions, to immune support, to hormone balance. Avi has more than 400,000 customers worldwide and has a Facebook community with over 65,000 active members. So guys, I got a box full of Avi products recently and I added them to my daily routine. One of their products that I want to talk about today is called Goodbye, and it's my new fave. So here's why. Avi's Goodbye is the perfect solution to hormonal balance issues, which include weight gain, hormonal acne, hot flashes, and so much more. Goodbye contains key ingredients such as DIM to help regulate estrogen production and KSM66 ashwagandha to help you feel relaxed and stress-free. And I must say that since adding Avi to my daily routine, I've had more energy and a clearer mind. So guess what, everybody? I think you guys can probably guess. You've probably heard enough of these podcast episodes to know that Infertile AF listeners can get 25% off today with code INFERTILEAF at myavi.com. That's myobvi.com. Use promo code INFERTILEAF and you'll get 25% off today. It's super Avi why you should do it. See what I did there? Let Avi help you reach your goals this summer. Again, go to myavi.com and use code INFERTILEAF for 25% off. Thanks, Avi.
Gotcha. And it was so stressful. And I had people judging me. You already have these kids. Like, why are you stressing out your body? My parents, my mom was like, just focus on the kids you have and you love. And it was very hard, but my husband was still supportive at this time. Okay, just use up the extra embryos. And I did, and they were gone and nothing was working. And I think it's like a lot of it is attributed to the stress. I don't know why it didn't work, but it was a very stressful period. So this is like over a 2-year period that I was going back and forth. And I said, okay, I'm cool. Like, I don't need to be pregnant again. I don't need that desire. I just want more children. And so if you remember, we always talked about adoption. And so we're like, okay, cool. But adoption's really expensive. And so we said, let's look into the foster care system. And so we were trying it took us about a year to get certified. I didn't want to be a foster mom. That was not my intention. My intention was to have a baby that I can mold into my own. And what we learned through this process is that my husband is really altruistic. And he was like, let's adopt a sibling unit who really needs us and we could help. And I wanted to be that person so badly because that would fulfill my need or desire to have more children. But we're also doing a great thing at the same time. And I remember at this point, like, this is a few years of just trying all different things. I like ran into his office. He was like in a meeting and I was like, I need to talk to you, crying. And I was like, I just want a baby. Like, I don't want to be this altruistic person. Like, I want, because if you're adopting an older sibling unit, they're generally going to be older and they generally have special needs. And I was like, I'm not a special person. Like, I don't want to do that. That's too much for me. And he's like, fine, go find a baby. And because in Georgia where we were, it was a 3-year waiting list for a baby, and a baby could be like under age 2. And I just like, that's a long time to wait. And I said, I was renting space in an adoption attorney's office. So I would see pregnant women all the time. I put out our family profile to every NICU around. I was like, I can do this, 6 months. Like, I got this. And I did not get it. Like, we failed at this. People were reaching out, like, pregnant women were reaching out, birth moms were saying, like, do you have horses and acreage? And were asking me all different, like, are you going to raise your child with a religion that we are not? Like, just like, I'm like, I can't change who I am or
exactly.
And it was a really, really, really hard time in our marriage because my husband's like, I'm done. Like, let's focus on what we have. And I just was like on this mission.
Yeah. And can we talk about that a little bit more, the marriage piece of it and the relationship? And, you mentioned therapy before. What were the disconnects between you and your husband? Like, what were you thinking and what was he thinking? And how did you guys navigate such a hard time?
So I'm just like not very flexible sometimes. And I had in my head, I want 4 kids. Like, that was my goal. I needed to check it off. And I had more love to give, more to offer. Let's figure out a way. I'm not the type of person to give up. Let's just figure out plan B, C, D, da, da, da. And he's like, it's too stressful. It's too expensive. I'm okay having 2 kids. And he had this thing in his head. His father was it was his second marriage. His dad was just like an older dad, and he's 5 years older than me. And he just didn't want to be an old dad. Like, that was his thing. So every year he'd be like, okay, fine, you can have one more year. It was his issue. But I look back now and I was like this like mission driven, crazy person who honestly would have done this on my own. And I mean, we were open, we're very open together, but we don't always agree. And so we did have a therapist who, would translate for us and be like, you guys are actually like on the same page. You're just going about talking about it different ways. If my 3rd kid didn't happen the way it did, I don't know where we would be, truthfully.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
So after the failed adoptions and just it not going anywhere, somebody reached out to me and said, listen, you helped me a few years ago through Jewish Fertility Foundation. I'm a single mom by choice. I'm looking to donate my extra embryos. My family's complete. And this is something I do on the side. Like, it's a byproduct of the services that we offer people who have extra embryos. Like, I'm a matchmaker. I do it, but I wasn't thinking about myself because I was trying to adopt. And then like after 6 months of working with this particular person, I was like, I can't find you any matches. Like you're asking for a lot. Like you want a relationship with this kid. You want X, Y, and Z. People are not so into that. And then one day I was just like, what about me? And she's like, and I think my husband was part of the conversation because he was like, well, how much is it going to cost? That was always his answer. Like, how much is it going to cost? And I told him it's a lot less expensive than doing IVF from scratch, which neither of us wanted to do. He was having issues, which he doesn't love talking about, but he was having some issues now, and it just wasn't right for our family. And if we were going to use donor anything, like I was open to using a donor embryo. And so I reached out to our now donor and I was like, what about me? And she's like, done. And it was not done. It was not an easy process. With her, it was easy, but it took about a year to understand how we were going to ship the embryos from New Jersey to Atlanta. There's so many FDA regulations. I mean, ridiculous rules and laws. We both failed our psychological evaluations. And
Wow.
it was so hard. It was so hard. And I truly didn't think it was going to happen. And finally, once we did get approved, my mom, there were two of them. So there was a girl embryo and a boy embryo. And my mom and my husband sat me down and together, and they're like, listen, you're going to put both of these embryos in. And after this, we're all done. Like we're done. We're telling you,
this is it.
You're done.
So how many years had it been all in?
5.
Okay.
Well, 5 since my last child.
Sure.
So 5 years of like me being a motivated person.
Motivated. Yes. I was very motivated as well.
If you ask my mom or my husband, crazy, but like, it was really a hard time. And I said, well, are you guys okay? Are you guys like, they were the ones in the relationship? What if it is twins? Are we good with that? Yeah, we were fine with that. And I'm like, but what if it doesn't work? And they're like, you have to figure that out, figure it out with your therapist, figure it out how you're going to deal with that. But that's it. Mm-hmm. And I put them both in and one took. And I now have a 4.5-year-old from that process.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about that process. How is it different from before? Like the things you had done to that point?
Oh God. I mean, it was a whole different experience because there's a whole nother family involved in the process. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't know this person. Jewishly, they were similar to me. And that was important for both of us, mm-hmm. To like, religious wise.
Sure.
And that was also a little bit complicated for the psychological evaluation because we were on the same page with so many things, with termination, which are questions that a psychologist might ask when mm-hmm. you're going through an evaluation process. There were red flags that came up because we were so similar. There are legal implications. You have to work with attorneys to figure out kind of an unknown situation because I didn't know what we were getting into. I just knew I wanted a baby, right? So mm-hmm. Attorneys are great in this because they really help ask questions that you would never think of. We set up, I think in our official agreement, like, let's try to get the kids together. He has two full biological siblings, a sister and a brother. Let's try to get them together once a year so that they don't like end up in summer camp together. And because they look alike, like fall in love and have babies. Cause that's scary.
Yes.
Also, it's called consiguity. So you don't want somebody who is your biological relative to be your partner.
Right. Oh, wow. So interesting.
And then thinking about things like, medical history. Also, because the donor is a single mom by choice, she chose a donor, a sperm donor. So like it was based on her preferences. I don't have a relationship with him, but we were trying to navigate what the relationship between our families would look like before we ever met each other. Mm. And that's weird. And it ended up being a completely different relationship than either of us ever anticipated.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting.
Today, I would say she's one of my closest friends.
Wow.
And she is family, and I love her kids like my own. And we actually see each other more than once a year if we can. We go on vacations together. We stay at her house. She stays at ours. And we're just like family now. And
right. Tell me about the, people have talked in the past about when embryo adoption is part of the story, which I think is such a cool thing that exists. There's so many different paths now that, you can build your families. Were you worried about like the bonding or any of that, like as opposed to doing it in a different way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I didn't know what he was going to come out looking like. And I did have a hard time bonding with my second child. And he was 100% biologically related to me. He came out looking like my dad now. And I was just like, there were a lot of things. We were moving internationally. I had a C-section, which I was frustrated about. And it took me a few months longer to like really connect, which I know is normal, but really, really connect. And it was different than my first child, who I just like instantly had a bond with. I love him a lot. I love them all right now. So and I'm open about this with my kids, but it took longer. And so I was super nervous and afraid. Like, what if I didn't recognize his smell or the way his feet looked and I did not experience that at all. But yes, those nerves were absolutely there.
So when did you start talking to the kids about, where they came from and how it all went down?
So my oldest at like 3 years old wrote me a Mother's Day note talking about how he's so glad he was the embryo and like we're very, very open in our family about their stories. That wasn't something that shifted when we brought our embryo donation child into our lives. So my big kids knew about the process from the start, and from birth, my third son knows how he was created and, is also very close with the donor as well.
Okay. So is there any more to the family building story, or when did you guys realize that your family was complete?
That's always hard, I think, for people who suffer from infertility. Like I said, like I always envisioned having 4 kids. I'm 44. My husband's almost 50. Like we're done. We're done by default. Like if I want to keep my husband as my husband, like I cannot even go there. Right. I mean, we always say like if there was a baby that was dropped off on our doorstep, like of course we have room in our heart and our home for that.
Right.
But we can't, for our marriage to survive, like we can't talk about it anymore. And like, I think I'm at the point of accepting it. Like I knew it was done for me. So that is my acceptance of being done.
So tell me when you started your foundation and shifted, kind of made turned your story into your passion work-wise.
So we are now in our 8th year, and we started as a community-based organization in Atlanta, and now we're in 7 locations nationally and scaling. Okay. So we offer financial assistance to people who are going through infertility. We offer emotional support and educational training. So we've taken those 3 prongs and opened up branches throughout the US. We are the Jewish Fertility Foundation, but we're open to anybody regardless of religious background. Our emotional support and our education is free of charge and open to anybody. The grants are specific for the Jewish community. And we're really excited. We just opened up our services to the LGBTQ community.
That's great.
We've given out $1.5 million in grants, loans, and discounts. We have like 124 babies, 54 babies on the way. And it's still fun.
Are you still in Atlanta?
I live in Atlanta, yeah.
So, okay, tell me why you felt it was so important to start it. What was missing that you were able to fill that hole?
As you might know, infertility is really lonely. It's isolating and it's expensive. And there was nothing in my Jewish community that was happening at the time to support me. I didn't even know where to turn. And I felt like it was my responsibility as somebody who works in the nonprofit space, who fundraises for nonprofits. It was my honor and it was my responsibility to be able to start something like this.
What are some things specifically like in the Jewish community that you guys are focused on that maybe a non-Jewish, similar kind of place isn't necessarily focused on? Like, what are you offering that other people aren't?
I mean, I think, especially in the more observant communities, family building is so crucial to our everyday Jewish engagement, going to synagogue. I mean, on Passover, we tell our children the story of Exodus, or how we left Egypt. I mean, everything is so catered and centered around children. So when you don't have these kids, like, where is your place in the Jewish community? And so part of it is just breaking down the stigma by talking about it. Part of it is, educating people within the Jewish community, like, where is your place? How can you grow your family? What are some perhaps out of the box suggestions like embryo donation when the typical or traditional fertility routes aren't working? And then like the support and mental health component. So we have something called the Fertility Buddies program. So we'll match you up based on not only your diagnosis and your geographic location, but also your religious denomination. In Judaism, there are many different levels, perhaps, of Judaism. And sometimes people who are in the more observant community don't want to be with somebody who is observant because it's so shameful and stigmatized and private that they prefer to be with somebody who they might not connect with. And then in the same regard, sometimes people really want to be with somebody who's religiously like them, so they don't have to explain so much about what is going on and some of the rituals that are associated with who they are.
Okay, that's very cool.
Also statistically within the Jewish community, we know our statistics are a little bit higher. So it used to be 1 in 8, now it's 1 in 6 nationally, but we always would say it's 1 in 6 within the Jewish community because of genetic reasons. We have so many genetic issues because we're a smaller population and getting married perhaps to one another. And then also people within the Jewish community tend to get married later. It's an age issue as well.
Is there room, do you think, in the Jewish community for people who go through infertility, but, pivot and are then childless, not by choice, or, childless after infertility? Like, how does that take a role?
So, yes. And we have to do a better job of educating the religious leaders on how to include childless families in that space. I know that we've just started, I don't even know if it's a support group or like a peer-to-peer meetup of people who are just toward the end of their journey. So it's hard. And I think education and just acknowledgement of that is, the first step, especially with our Jewish communal leaders.
Okay. I love that that's an important thing to you, because I think that's really important too. That community, people always are trying to figure out, where do I fit in? Like if I had to pivot, I never say give up or quit because I feel like I don't like that terminology. But if they had to pivot and their family ended up looking different than they originally intended, where do they fit in? So,
but also it's the same is true in our community. If you don't get married, if you don't find your partner, so like, where is your place if you're a 45-year-old single woman? Like, really? And I think that has come further quicker than a family without children.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. And thank you to Elana for sharing her story. Definitely check out the Jewish Fertility Foundation. And also, if you're looking for a safe space to land, check out Fertility Rally. We're on Instagram at Fertility Rally. Our website is fertilityrally.com. We are the place I wish I had when I was going through all the bullshit and all the heartache and all the depression and all the relationship issues and all the just terrible things that we all go through. It's so hard, you guys, but you're not alone. So check us out at Fertility Rally. I'm happy to answer any questions. We're open now, so go check us out. No matter what you're going through, you will connect with somebody, I promise, multitudes of people actually, who are going through it as well. So check us out. And also, if you have 2 seconds to rate and review this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Talk to you next time.